Potter.
Scottie B going to work in the paint.
Eastern Conference Final. New NBA champion. And it's a team from Toronto, Canada. We the North are now we the champions.
What is going on, Raptors Nation? It is Luca here back with the Raptors Nation podcast on this Friday, December 13th. Hope you're all doing well. So I was rewatching my last pod that I dropped last Friday, and boy, have things changed for the worst for the Toronto Raptors. Of course, the biggest news since that last pod on Friday was the fact that Scottie Barnes got injured, sprained his right ankle. He will be out for the next little bit. So all of a sudden, the direction of the Raptors might have just changed in a big way. In this one, I'm going to talk about what's next for the Raptors. We're going to look at if the Raptors are going to trade Jakob Poeltl, because his name has been coming up a ton in trade rumors following the Scottie Barnes injury. And then I'm going to tell you who I think is the most likely Raptor to be traded at this upcoming deadline. So before we dive right into it, guys, do me a solid, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. This pod comes out usually every Thursday, but because the Raptors have been playing on Thursdays all of a sudden, I just carried it over to Friday. So you could check this pod out, YouTube, wherever you get your favorite podcast, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review, would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, you can follow me on X at Luca Rosano 3, as we are slowly but surely approaching 100 episodes of this pod. I think this is something like episode 67, 68. So we're getting there. We're getting there. And I'm approaching writing my 1,000th article over at raptorsnation.com. So we got all Raptor stuff covered over at raptorsnation.com, the website affiliated to this channel. So go check that out as well. All right, let's dive right into the first thing here. So what's next for the Raptors? It looked like they were starting to finally get healthy, and then they just got hit with injuries once again. And the biggest one, the Scottie Barnes one, right? Like, Emmanuel Quickly, Bruce Brown still sidelined, but Scottie have been playing some of his best basketball, really taking his game to a whole new level. And then he gets injured on Monday against the Knicks, coming down awkwardly on Karl Anthony Towns' foot. Barnes was in visible pain. You saw it on his face, and you knew right away this is not good. Had to be helped up to the tunnel, hopped to the back. We did not see him, and then it was revealed that he will be out with a right ankle sprain for several weeks. He will be reevaluated by the team in a week. That was on Monday, so we'll probably know more about Barnes early next week. The good news is the Raptors haven't been playing a ton, and they're not going to be playing a ton over the next little bit. Like, the Raptors got 3 days off right now, and then once they play on Monday against the Bulls, they're going to have another 2 days off before their next matchup on next Thursday. So they got a lot of time, but you look at the Scottie Barnes injury, it did not look good. Surely the Raptors are not going to rush him back. And that's been the theme of this Raptors season. I just wrote an article about this over at raptorsnation.com. This season has been decimated by injuries, similarly to how it was decimated last season by injuries. And you look at the fact of the matter is, like, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, Barbecue, the trio, the three players that the Raptors have fully invested in as being this team's core, at least for now, they have not played a game together this season. They have not played a game together since March 1st. So that's crazy, because you want to see what you have in these guys. And there was a wild graphic over on Sportsnet that I posted on X that just shows you that we haven't seen these players playing together on the Raptors. So this is just the injury timeline. All three of Barnes, Barrett, Quickly have not played together in a game since March 1st, have played in 439 minutes. All three plus Poeltl, only 234 minutes. All three plus Grady Dick, only 18 minutes. And then this is the wildest part of it all. The Raptors' projected starting five of Emmanuel Quickly, Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl have only played in 4 minutes together. So you don't even know what you have in that five. 4 minutes, like, that's insane. And we're not going to see that, it seems, for the next little bit, because Barnes several weeks. I don't think the Raptors are like I said, Raptors not going to rush him back. Who knows when we're going to see Scottie Barnes again. Emmanuel quickly, no timeline for his return. He played with Barnes only one half of a game this season. That was in the opener. He goes down, then he comes back, and then he suffers another injuries. He's got a partial tear in his UCL, and he's trying to recover from that. And then there's no timeline for Bruce Brown. So the biggest part here is Emmanuel quickly, Scottie Barnes. Like, these are the two guys you fully invested in, you paid this summer, and then, with RJ, this is your core. We have not seen this Raptors team healthy. We have not seen this group together. So it's definitely been frustrating from just, an overall fans perspective, because you want to see what these guys can give you together. And obviously Raptors management wants to see what these guys are going to give them to see how they're going to proceed from here on out. It's been a terrible year in terms of health, but you can look at this almost like a blessing in disguise, because there's been this highly touted 2025 NBA draft. The Raptors now are in a good position to land a top 5 pick. Right now, they're projected to get a top 4 pick. If they continue this losing pace, you would think with 2 of their best players remaining on the shelf, they're not going to do a whole ton of winning down the stretch here. I did my first ever simulation over on Tankathon, and I got the Raptors winning the lottery, getting that number 1 overall pick. So I know it's bleak now, but if the Raptors, go through another season of suffering, but then at the end of that tunnel, there's a light, and that being a generational prospect in this upcoming draft, and you add that all of a sudden to this core, to some of these other young players, an Abaji, a Grady Dick, then you're cooking, right? So that's why, like, it sucks now. I know a lot of fans don't want to live through a tank. They don't want to go through a tank, because who likes to cheer on a loser? Who likes to watch a team that is depleted? But it's for the greater good. It's for the greater gain of this team. And really, I think it's going to take one more year of suffering and having to sit through some of these rough games if guys remain out and if injuries continue, of losses piling up. But then, like, with this team getting a top 5 draft pick and potentially even a top 3, there I say even maybe the lottery gods are on their side, give them the number 1 pick. This is going to be a really good team moving forward, and their future is certainly going to be bright. I mean, it's already bright. And then you're adding that pick, and then you're really cooking. So you look at the Raptors. I mean, I said this on X. You certainly should not rush Barnes back. Don't rush quickly back. You want to play this thing slow. Now's the time to play the rookies. You want to see a lot of Jacoby. You want to see Grady get back to, how he was playing before. It's funny. Grady stepped up his game the last time Scottie Barnes was injured, and we started seeing more of that with that game against the Heat. Grady Dick putting up his numbers. So you want to see more Jacoby. You want to see Grady continue to take his game to the next level. And then, RJ coming off a very rough outing against the Heat. Crazy, because he did have a triple-double, but you want to see him show you a lot of good things. And then, the rookies, you want to unleash them, more mobile, more shed. We're probably going to see, if this team fully tanks and they're terrible by the end of the season, we're going to see Chomchi, you would think, at some point to close the season. So I think that's what the season has now become. With Barnes going down again, the second time in as many months, I'm not going to say the Raptors are going to shut him down, but you want to take this super, super slow. There's no use rushing him back. There's no use to try to make a run at the play-in. Like Masai said, playing for what? You got your eyes now on that draft pick. You got your eyes on the upcoming draft. So that is where the Raptors are at this point. And I mean, you look at their most recent games, they've lost 4 in a row. It's not going to get any easier for them going up against teams that have a playoff spot, play-in spot. So again, like, it sucks that injuries have hit this team hard, but it's almost like a blessing in disguise that when it looked like this team was going to push for the play-in, was going to push to be a middle of the pack team, injuries basically said, no, like, you guys are going to have to be bad and suffer these injuries for one more season. But trust me, you might get paid in a big way by the end of that. At the end of that. And it's looking like that could be the case if this team continues to lose these games and continues this losing pace. It might end up working out really well for this team in the grand scheme of things. And that's what it is. This is a big picture thing. This is not a retool. This is a rebuild. Things take slow. Things take time. But if they get another top pick with this group, like this team going into next season, again, you hope health is then on their side from there on out. They could be a fun one to watch. But in terms of how they're going to proceed for the rest of this season, yeah, it just looks like that they're going to have to they're just going to have to deal with what the cards that they've been given. And because you got these big injuries, these key injuries, you got to just go along here. And yeah, you got to play for the draft positioning, the lottery positioning. That is the best move on the chessboard for this Raptors team at the moment. So, hey, I know it looks bleak now, Raptors fans, but the Raptors have every reason to be optimistic past this season. So there is a lot of good things to come, even though right now it doesn't seem like there is. So that begs the question, okay, if the Raptors are going to play for draft positioning, if that's the best move on the chessboard, what are they going to do at the deadline, right? Like, you would think now, like, the Raptors are going to be sellers. Like, it was never a question of if the Raptors are going to be sellers or buyers. I think we all knew they were going to be sellers. The better question was, how aggressive of a seller were the Raptors going to be at the deadline? And that question remains. How aggressive are the Raptors going to be when it comes to offloading some of their veteran pieces in hopes of getting some value back? So you look at Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher. I think those are the obvious ones. They're going to draw interest. I think the Raptors are definitely going to try to move those players. The bigger decisions, I think, are going to come with Kelly Olynyk, but mainly with a Jakob Poeltl, because his name has come up a ton. He obviously makes this team better. Just take that game against the Heat. Like, they were competitive in the first half when it looked like Yak wasn't going to play. It was a late scratch. That was weird, by the way. He does come back after his back was feeling better. I guess the trainers, worked on him. He felt good enough to go. And then they were competitive in that first half, but then things fell apart. And then I was just left asking myself, like, how much worse would this have gotten without Yak, who actually had a nice game? So here's the thing about Yak, right? There's this whole debate. Should the Raptors trade him? Should they not trade him? I do think the Raptors should trade him. I'm definitely on team trade Yak, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as saying, okay, yeah, just trade him and get good value in return, because it's hard now to make deals. With the new CBA, things have tightened, and it's harder to find a logical match. It's harder to pull off these deals to make salary match and all that. And you look at Yak, yeah, you can make the argument like he is going to be tough to replace, right? Centers don't, like, true centers like Yak don't grow on trees anymore. And, this team, they did make that trade at the time to bring him in. If they lose him, are they going to be in search for the next Yak? Are they going to be able to get that? So those are all valid points. But then on the other side, I can say, okay, like, if you don't trade Yak now and maximize his value when it's at its highest, and then he steadily declines, you're going to be regretting that decision. You're going to be kicking yourself in the butt. So I think ultimately it comes down to the deal. It's as simple as that. Sounds logical enough, right? And if the Raptors do get what they want, I think they make a trade. And when you look at kind of like the outline of a deal that you would think the Raptors would be looking for in a trade for Yak, well, if you kind of compare it to some of the other deals they made, they're probably going to want like a young center and then a draft pick. Like, that would be best case scenario, in my opinion, in this situation. Would a team be willing to fork over kind of a young, still raw center and then a first-round pick? I think Jakob Poeltl could definitely command a first-round pick. There are a lot of teams that could use him to kind of get over the hump. I haven't really looked into like the meat and potatoes of it, of like what a deal could look like. But I think it's as simple as that. It comes down to the deal. We know, just based on Masai Ujiri's track record of the Anunoby deal, of the Siakam deal, like, he takes time when making deals. Like, those were deals that took years to finally amount to making. And he's going to want value back. And he's done a good job of getting value back in the deals. Like, that Anunoby trade, win-win for both sides. Great trade. You would do that all over again, 100 times out of 100 times. The Siakam trade, I know a lot of us were hard on him, myself included. You probably could have gotten a more up-and-coming prospect that's ready to play now if you had traded him earlier. Like, obviously, when negotiating with Indiana, you would have loved like a Benedict Mathurin. But you look at that deal right now, like, it's turning out to being a good deal for the Raptors, because you were able to flip one of the picks. You got Abaji, who stepped up big. You got Olynyk, who's a solid veteran guy on this team. You got that 2026 first-round pick, which looks really good right now if the Pacers continue to drop. And then Bruce Brown, you're probably going to flip for more. So that Siakam trade at the time was very, very highly criticized, but that might end up being a huge win for the Raptors. It's looking like it is. So Masai Ujiri is methodical. It's going to come down to the deal. And if the Raptors are just going to trade Yak to trade him, no, I disagree with that. That would just be plain old stupid. But if you can get an insane haul from him, for him from a team that is looking to take that next step and contend this season, and you get a first-round pick and a young guy who can turn into something maybe like a raw guy, a raw big man, like you gotta do that, because I know you can say, oh, if this team is ready to compete next season, they're going to need a center. But if the deal is just too good to pass up on, you got to do it, because you don't know if you can trade Yak again after the season, especially if he declines. Like, I don't think he's going to, like, you hope this play remains, obviously, but he's not going to get any better than this. Like, usually when players turn his age, it's a steady decline. So, yeah, if the deal is there, it's hot, you can cash in on a big haul, you absolutely do it. But again, with the new CBA, how it's more difficult to make trades and find trade partners and all that stuff, it might be hard for the Raptors to find a pathway to a deal like that. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. And I think it comes down to if something very, very juicy pops up. So I know a lot of people want to see him stay. A lot of people want to see him go. A lot of people want to see the Raptors capitalize on his value. And I think there's some good points to be made on both sides of the spectrum. Again, I am on team trade Yak, but it comes down to the return of what the Raptors will be getting back in that potential haul. All right, so that leads me to the next thing. Most likely Raptors player to be dealt. Who is it going to be? I think there's three main ones here. I don't think the Raptors are going to trade Olynyk, so I'm going to take him off that list. The three obvious ones, or the three big ones: Jakob Poeltl, Bruce Brown, Boucher. So then you dive into it. Okay, which one of those players is the most likely to be traded? You would hope the Raptors, like, if they don't trade Yak, they can at least trade Brown and Boucher. And I know I'm not really giving you one or the other, but I think they both will have a good chance of getting dealt, because you look at Boucher, $10.8 million last year of his contract. It's an easier contract to absorb from a contending team. And I think Boucher, like, you look at his skill set, he's a guy who hustles, shoots the three, blocks the three, and you can kind of play him as that small ball center forward from off your bench. So I think there is going to be interest in Boucher. What can you get back in return? A second round pick and something along those lines. You would hope. You're not going to get a first round pick for Boucher, but you could definitely get a second for him. I would say, Bruce Brown is probably the most likely, just because there's been a lot of stuff already about how it's a known thing that the Raptors are going to be trying to move him. Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype recently reported that the Raptors will look to trade him. It's been a foregone conclusion since they made the Siakam deal that they were going to trade him at some point. Obviously, they bought him some more time when they exercised that $23 million option. And the Raptors, I mean, in a perfect world, I think they do want to trade Brown. But what's his value like? Beyond just kind of the players, or the players that you get back in the deal to match salary, what picks are going to be attached to that? Because I don't know if you can confidently say at this point you're getting a first-round pick for Bruce Brown. There's been some chatter. Like, is that all of a sudden turned into 2 second-rounders? Like, hopefully Masai Ujiri works his magic. But this is a guy who hasn't played this season. This is a guy who did not look good to end last season. I know he was dealing with the knee. He got surgery, great. But we got to see Bruce Brown back on this court. Like I talked about quickly, and Barnes taking their sweet time. We need to see Brown soon, and hopefully he's back soon. There's been no timeline for him, and it's been weird with Brown because there was a report initially, I believe it was from Grange, saying that he was going to be back at some point during that road trip. He never showed up, and now there's still no timeline for his return. So I don't know if Brown's like close to a return, and that's not good news, because how are you going to get a nice return for him if he hasn't played games? So Bruce Brown, you look at him, I think he does still offer a lot of value to a contender. He's a versatile player, but it's going to come down to what the Raptors are willing to accept for him. It's funny. I think just based on like what I see this team doing, because it's a known thing, they're going to try their hardest to trade Bruce Brown. But I think there's an easier pathway of a Chris Boucher deal. But obviously you're hoping that you could get more for Bruce Brown than you are for Boucher. Like that's the thought here. But yeah, I would kind of have, with that being said, I would kind of have Brown and Boucher at almost like a tie of like who's more likely to be traded. I think those two are priority of the Raptors to trade if they are looking to, get some assets back and be a bit of a seller at the deadline. And then the biggest one is going to be how aggressive are they with the selling and if they are going to end up moving Poeltl. But I think with Poeltl, it's a definite 50-50, but Brown and Boucher, I definitely see a higher likelihood of the Raptors moving on from them. And again, guys that don't make sense on this team anymore. Boucher's completely out of the rotation. And Brown, like, it was always a matter of like, what are you going to get back for him? You never really viewed Brown as a main rotation piece. And like, why would you, right? Because like, if you have Brown remain on this team, he's taking away playing time from rookies, young guys who can develop and who you hope to fill that spot one day. So it just doesn't make any sense to keep either of those players. So yeah, we'll see how aggressive the Raptors get at the deadline. But who do you think is the most likely Raptors player to be dealt? But that is going to conclude today's pod, guys. I'm going to end it there. Just wanted to talk about the latest from this Raptors team. But let me know your thoughts, some of these talking points. What do you think the Raptors are going to do at the deadline? How do you think they're going to proceed from here on out? Are you all in for this team to be terribly bad the rest of the way to get a good pick? And what do you think happens with Jakob Poeltl? I think that's the biggest question right now, biggest talking point amongst fans. Like, what is this Raptors team going to do with Poeltl? And yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave us a 5-star review. You can find it on Apple iTunes or Spotify. That is it for me. This is Lucas signing off. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all again in the next one.